I'm Jen, and I recently quit my job a month ago to pursue my dream of being an artist. And along the way, this book came into my life, and I love it so far, so I'm going to tell you about my journey in the first week. This book is called The Artist's Way. It's by Julia Cameron, and when I first quit my job, my corporate job, it was a very stable job, and after I quit it, I was in fear. I'm just feeling so scared. I've already made the decision. I've already quit. You know, like it's the contract is ending. And even though I knew I was quitting my job as an act of self-love to finally pursue my dream of being an artist, I was just still so scared. It was keeping me up at night, and I came across this book, like I said, on Instagram, and I became obsessed with it. So now let me explain what The Artist's Way is, kind of. It's by Julia Cameron, and I have the 30th anniversary of it, so that means that it has been helping artists discover and recover their creative selves for over 30 years. The book is intense. It's a 12-week course, and throughout the weeks, she works on a different part of your artist self, your inner child. Also, in every week, there are tasks. Some of the tasks are tools, and they stay the whole time you do it, and you're encouraged to continue using the tools even after the book is done. And some of the tasks are just weekly that are meant to really cement the lessons from the reading and move you to emotion potentially, and unblock some of your creative blocks that you have going on in your body. And I love this book. I recommend this book, and today I'm going to talk about my reading takeaways. Immediately, she recognizes the people who are reading the book that don't feel comfortable with the word God, which I really like because it is a quite spiritual book. And if you are skeptic, she just says replace it with whatever word makes sense for you. So for some people it's source or creator or one, you know. I like to say goddess. That's kind of fun too. That's fun and sexy. I really love this. I love that she's using the word power and higher power and great creator. I'm reading a book that I'll be referencing later called Happy Pocket Full of Money that was recommended to me by my amazing sister. And in that book, he refers to the great creator as the one, or all that is, because we're basically just a bunch of vibrating light energy subatomic particles anyway. Like, we're all made up of the same thing, so there really is no great creator. Another quote she says is, "You do not need to understand electricity to use it." Love that. Don't worry yourself on the details. Take a seat, relax, and just enjoy whatever comes to you in this book. Don't think, oh, frick, well, I don't believe in God, so this book isn't for me. No, I think anyone can get something out of this book. If you were looking for that little piece of information, I've got you. And so now we'll get into a line from the introduction that blew me away. It was a synchronicity. So Julia, in the introduction, she talks about her own journey. And this line really stood out to me, and it perked up my ears because it relates really closely to my favorite quote of all time. And she says, "The next minute I suddenly knew," as she was walking through the streets of New York, you know, just thinking about what she was going to do for the rest of her life. And the thought came to her, so she said, "Maybe it was a wish exhaled on somebody else's walk." So this quote means the world to me because one of the scary thoughts I had in my head when I quit my job was, I was saying, yeah, you're an artist and you think you're good and have good ideas, but what about the rest of the world? So this quote, she's saying, "Maybe it was a wish exhaled on somebody else's walk," reminded me of a different quote from A Happy Pocket Full of Money, where he says, "Don't think of every creative aspiration or idea as an egoic manifestation. It's not coming from you. It's coming from somebody across the world, across the room, next door, praying for you to do the very thing that you're inspired to do. And I loved this. And both quotes they're saying the same thing in different beautiful ways. And it just makes me feel good. It validates me as an artist to know that I'm not doing this for me. Yes, I'm doing it for me, right? Because it's an act of self-love, but I'm also doing it for someone out there who actually wants this, like really, really wants me to make this video, or really, really wants me to sing Poor Unfortunate Souls. Like somebody out there wants me to do this. And that is gorgeous. So now the next lines of the book that I will be talking about are from the Basic Principles chapter, which again is still before the book and the course even starts. This is just the introductory chapters that get your mind right for this book and prepare you for the words and the vocab that Miss Julia is using. One of my favorite things that she mentions in this part of the Basic Principles is the idea of synchronicity. She uses this to explain synchronicity. She says, "Leap and the net will appear." And I loved that. I needed to hear that because, as I mentioned, I quit my job and I really needed a net. And now I want to talk about the synchronicity that appeared in my first week. So about 3 months ago, I started manifesting really hard, like writing down everything and saying them out loud every morning. And one of the things I said every morning was, all of my money comes from my creative endeavors. And I really, really just wanted to send this home, and I really wanted this to be true. And so, it's true. I got offered my dream job, and I'm doing it this week. And it's a lovely balance of creation, coordination, pragmatism. Another thing that happened to me this week, or happened to my entire family, was that my pa passed away. And I don't want to refer to this as some like serendipitous synchronicity, I don't want to say that it was the happiest thing ever. But it did create a lot of relief in my family in a beautiful way. Pa was an incredible artist and an incredible dad, grandfather, great-grandfather, and he was really struggling near the end. And so he got to spend Thanksgiving with my entire family in California, where I'm from, and I got to watch from abroad as usual. And then he passed about 5 days later. So this was something that hit me this week really hard in my first week of reading. And what I did that morning was I sat down on my little altar. I burned some incense. I wept and I cried and I laughed for Pa, just for his life and for his soul that has passed on to go be with Grammy, his wife, and my cat Drake. Shout out Drake. They're just all having a kiki up there. They're all just having a fun little party now. And so I know that he's in a good place. And so I prayed to him. And then at the end, I felt this urge to ask him for some of his creative fairy dust, because he was such an amazing artist. And he just found ways to make it his life and his livelihood and to support his entire family with his art. So I was like, Pa, sprinkle some of that on me. And I feel like he has, because I'm drawing better, I'm writing better, I'm more motivated to just even sit down and record this video, even after having a long day of work and school and all my finals being due in 6 days. I'm still having the motivation at the end of the night to record something and to create something. And so thank you, Pa. And okay, so this one hit me. She said, "How do you know if you're creatively blocked? ? Jealousy is an excellent clue." Oof. Yeah, so I didn't know I was blocked, but I have a lot of jealousy in me. I've always had a lot of jealousy in me, specifically towards brunette famous people. I wonder why. It's just, I'm the common denominator here. It's clearly an issue with me and my insecurity. And yeah, it's something to look at, it's something to nibble on, but not beat myself up over, because it's a natural response to fear. We get jealous. We're like, oh, well, they can only do that thing because they grew up with money, or they can only do that thing because they have this and this foot size, And so all of that is not true. It's just conditions and stories that I'm making up in my head as a response to a negative stimuli, fear, right? So now we will move on to the basic tools chapter. This is after basic principles, and she goes over the two main basic tools that stay consistent throughout the whole book, and that is the artist date and the morning pages. Very simply put, the artist date is 2 hours a week where you take your inner child and your little artist inside of you on a date to go do something that's interesting for you, or you learn something new that you've always wanted to do. The next tool is called morning pages. Morning pages are incredible. I don't know if you've heard of them. I'll quickly explain them also. It is 3 pages of stream of consciousness every single morning before you start your day. And my journal is quite small, so writing 3 pages is not actually that hard. I recommend getting a journal this size because it's satisfying. And also, she also makes you aware of lots of things that could come up during these 2 activities. One is called the censor. This is amazing. I loved learning about this idea. So something interesting about me is that one of my astrological placements is that I have my sun in Virgo in the 12th house. And if anybody is into astrology and is familiar with that, it's kind of a tougher placement. And it makes me extremely, demonically critical of myself, especially when it's dark. That's when the demon comes out. And Julia has named that demon for me. She has defined that demon for me. She has given me the tool of the censor and to understand my inner demon. And what I loved that she said, it was also really scary, but also kind of it was hot. I like the way she said it. She said, make no mistake, the censor is out to get you. It's a cunning foe. Every time you get smarter, so does it. So obviously this is terrifying, but what's more terrifying is not knowing what you don't know. So I made a picture of my censor. I drew it. It's really scary. And then I put a cross through it. So that was a really fun and awesome activity. And now I know that whenever I get these awful things in my brain, I'm like, oh, that's not true. People don't want to throw rocks at me on stage. That's just my censor trying to be a monster, or being a monster and telling me that I'm worth nothing. None of that is true, okay? Another thing that she talks about is the idea of logic brain and creative brain. Love how she defines these as well. Love how she talks about them. I have a really good relationship with my logic brain. I am super pragmatic and organized, and I love a schedule, and I love details. And so me and my logic brain, we're tight. Me and my creative brain, however, I haven't given her the time of day. I didn't give her the resources she needed, the sleep, the time, the money. I was like, oh, whatever. And creative brain, no, she's super important. She needs to be nurtured like a child. And what I love about this book is that it's kind of made me look at these 2 characters inside of myself and say, okay, it's kind of like the logic brain is my husband, right? So my husband and I are like, oh God, look at creative brain. What is she doing? And at the same time, I'm like, my baby, my creative brain, let me nurture you. Let me feed you. What do you want to wear? And so I love what I've created in my head about it, and it's kind of just made me have more fun. Maybe it seems a little dissociative, but I just love thinking about it this way. Okay, so now we are getting into the chapter called Recovering a Sense of Safety, and this is week 1. So the goal of week 1 is to read this whole chapter and then to do as many of the tasks that stand out on the page to you. So I started reading and immediately I was blown away because she starts it off with a bang. She goes straight into shadow artist, which refers to shadow self or maybe your darker side, and it's a good read. The whole time I was giggling and making sounds in my bed. I read this, I put a timestamp. I read this at 32 in the morning. Why did I say it like that? I read it at 12:30 in the morning. And girl, judging your early artistic efforts is artistic abuse. It is impossible to get better and look good at the same time. Okay, and so that concludes what I got from the reading. Now we will get into the tasks and what came up for me in the tasks. So the first task, of course, is the morning pages. This starts off your day. what can I say? I love them. It allowed me to reset my brain and ground into my body and into my thoughts. It gave me the opportunity to observe my thoughts as well before the day started and to know, oh, whoa, okay, we're in a little bit of a bad mood. Let's try to get out of that a little bit. So then all within my pages, I went through like all the phases of grief every single morning, because sometimes I wake up in a bad mood or a pessimistic mood, and it was incredible. One of the mornings, I was like Einstein. So many ideas were coming to my brain. I was like, huzzah, eureka, with every word that I wrote. And other mornings, I wrote like fart, 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 fart. Like I actually filled half a page with just the word fart because I was over it. Like I didn't want to do it. However, I'm so happy that I did something consistent. And even if you don't like the morning pages, doing them every morning and making it a habit is an act of self-love. And I feel so proud of myself. I feel very proud of myself. Pat on the back. The next task was artist date. And as I said, I started a new job this week, so I trained so much in the past couple days. I worked a lot in the past couple days, and also I have all my finals due in 6 days. So it was really hard to find the time for my artist date, an accumulative 2 hours. So I had to be really intentional when I had times alone just in my room to do things that were out of the ordinary for me. And I may not have done 2 hours. I don't think I really fully committed to the artist date. I did have a lot of moments where I could have, and I chose not to, which she said and warned about. But I feel like I did this task enough. I feel like if I were to be graded on this task, I would get like an 80%. So the next task I did was called time travel. And I had to list 3 old enemies of my creative self. I unlocked a creative enemy that I had forgotten about, and he is awful. And something that's important to note about this task is you are coming from a place, you're getting in the mindset of your child self, of the person who was extremely hurt by the enemy. After that, which was related, was to select one of these villains and write as much detail as you can about the horror story. And I was crying during that as well. I just felt so bad for the 15-year-old Jenny who went through that situation. I wrote about a musical theater competition I was in where my perception, I don't know actually how it was because we all live in our own worlds, but my perception of that was that I was an outcast the whole time, and I wasn't taken seriously. And things were verbally said to me that, you can't really, when someone says, hey, you don't deserve to be here, you hear that, if that's like verbatim what they say, then naturally you take that to heart, especially when it's somebody who is supposed to be a mentor. The next task was to list 3 old champions of your creative self-worth, and this was a great chance to bring me out of my sadness and my anger and resentment for my enemies. And I just had so much fun writing about the champions of my artistic journey. I am so lucky, and I have the most loving people in my life. And I had a lot of fun writing about this. And I noticed that the champions I wrote about were actually people who I'm not close to. They were people who were kind of random, and that their kindness and compliments were completely unprovoked. Another one was to take my artist self for a walk, and it started snowing this week in Prague. I live in Prague. I don't think I mentioned that. I'll tell my life story in another video. But I took myself on a walk in the snow. I walked home from school one of the days, and I just had such a fun time looking at all the different types of snow, right? There's snow that looks like sand. There's snow that's black, that's very slippery. And I just had fun, and I played with icicles and took little videos and just kind of pranced around like a woodland fairy in a snowy winter wonderland, and it was magical and amazing. And so I feel like that recaps my first week of the Artist's Way. It's just been an extremely healing journey for me and my inner child. So I recommend The Artist's Way 1,000,000%, and what I said in this video hasn't even covered an inch of what you'll get out of it, because as I said, it's so subjective and so perceptive, and everyone has an artist in them, and everyone has been affected and hurt and loved in different ways. Thank you so much for watching this video. I am hoping to continue on this series and post week 2 and week 3, but then again, we never know what happens in life. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I really hope so. And thank you for your time. So, goodbye, and I'll see you later.